Jon Anik and Kenny Florian podcast. Jon Anik and Kenny Florian.
I f***ing love them. I can't get enough of them.
Let's hear that Boston next.
Big jab there from Duffy, and Frank Mir is hurt now. Down goes Duffy out cold. Frank Mir does it again. Rock'em sock'em robots here. Oh my goodness.
Hyperbole.
There are a couple of absolutely self-involved bullshit artists.
Here are your hosts, Jon Anik and Kenny Florian.
Give me the live. No more live to take, Ken Flo. Give me the live on a Monday. Happy tax day. Monday, April 15, 2024, episode 482 of the Anik and Florian podcast. UFC 300 is in the can. We are live. We're going to start going live twice a week, ladies and gentlemen, not just to commemorate events like UFC 300. I got an extra pep in my step today, Ken Flo. It's good to see you, buddy. It was great to see you in Vegas. Anik and Florian podcast on location. How we feeling?
Likewise, man. The live shows just feel different. Energetically, it's different. And I imagine for UFC 300, man, it must have been amazing. What a card. Rarely, you see this huge buildup for all these fights, top to bottom. It was the biggest card, I think, in UFC history. And sometimes they don't always deliver. This one definitely did that.
It certainly had everything, and it was laid out beautifully by the promotion. And it's always fun for us to look to our right while we're broadcasting these events, and to our left to see the UFC executives and the UFC matchmakers and their responsiveness to a given fight that they have put together. Even a fight like Bobby Green and Jim Miller. Promotionally, they were adamant 4 times to put that fight together. And man, Bobby Green was leaking blood of Jim Miller all over that octagon. And it just sort of snowballed from there. A tremendous show. We're going to recap the ever-living daylights out of it with you today. We're also going to talk to Ray Longo. We'll ask him how it felt to have the only winning fighter booed at UFC 300. No, I'm just kidding, but I'm going to give it hard to Ray Longo as I usually do. He'll join us at the bottom of the hour, and we are hoping to be with you for a couple hours today live on the Anik and Florian podcast channel, DraftKings YouTube channel as well, and we will get into all things UFC 300. Headlines brought to you by Cuervo. Now's a good time to enjoy the tequila that invented tequila. So kind of feels like I need to begin the Ray Longo minute with Max Holloway and not Aljamain Sterling, and kind of feels like I should begin the show with Max Blessed Holloway and not the UFC light heavyweight champion Alex Pereira, Ken Flo. I mean, you're sort of the A side of this podcast. 3 times you fought for the UFC title. Tough for us Team Florian folks that you never brought that home, actually. But just kidding. I mean, where do we even begin? I guess I would just start with being so, attitude of gratitude just for this live event and this fan base and this fight week and what this sport has built into to be able to have a showcase like this. And, you're going to be hard pressed to find an MMA card on paper with this type of depth. I would say probably until like 2032, UFC 400, maybe not. I mean, the Conor McGregor pay-per-views are enormous. Noche UFC is going to be huge, but it's just hard to have a collection of talent come together like this and stay together like this. And then to execute a show like that, we're very happy it's in the can,
Absolutely. It felt big to me just watching at home on television. And it really starts to become this celebration by the UFC itself on this amazing milestone of 300 pay-per-view events. Again, I was around for UFC 100. That felt like a big deal. It was a celebration of putting on 100 pay-per-view events. And now we're at 300. Yeah, and just being out there in fight week again, every time I'm there, it's a huge reminder of how big this sport has become, John. You've been able to see it. You're on the ground all the time. But I'm curious, where do you kind of rank this as far as the energy, specialness of all the events that you've called? Where would you kind of put this? Did it feel big? It felt big just watching.
Oh, it felt enormous. As I said, we're glad this one's in the goddamn Ken Flo. Yeah. It's hard sort of to put these things in proper context, especially a few days removed from it. It didn't have that International Fight Week Hall of Fame backdrop. I think immediately you start to think about Conor McGregor pay-per-views, and the biggest show I had called prior to this one was UFC 229 in 2018, Conor McGregor versus Khabib Nurmagomedov, and the biggest fight in UFC history singularly, and I think that probably still holds, right? Then ends and there's a brawl that plays out, right? So I don't know that anything, and then I got in trouble with the law later that night, actually. So I don't know that anything will top UFC 229, but UFC 300 is certainly right there. It just felt enormous, and we just undertook, I think, a lot to try to over and not under deliver. And these broadcasts can take on a life of their own. But yes, in terms of the athletes and Davis and Figueredo walking out at 3:12 p.m. Pacific, it was everything and then some. And even if you think about singular moments during the night, Jan Xiaonan being choked nearly or / half unconscious at the end of round one and everything that fight had. And we won't get to that for probably 45 minutes. So let us get into it if we could. And since when Kenny was at ESPN, sometimes we did call him K-Swiss because he didn't like making fight picks, right? K-Switzerland. So you didn't necessarily lead a horse to water. So I'm going to lead the program with Max Blessed Holloway if I could. And if you had told Dana White and the UFC brass that the BMF title fight would have ended this way, you just couldn't have possibly jotted up any better. And even anyone who was lukewarm to the origination of the BMF title fight, Kenny, this sport needs to crown its bad motherfuckers, and in this case, the baddest motherfucker is Max Blessed Holloway, and certainly he's worthy of that distinction. And as Joe Rogan said on the broadcast, this win essentially takes him from arguably the greatest featherweight of all time to one of the all-time greats. And I'm glad that, not that he needed it, but I'm glad that he's now in that conversation. What a huge moment in a career full of them for Max Blessed Holloway.
Isn't it so interesting how one performance can change the trajectory of your career in a lot of ways and can change the narrative extremely quickly? Now, were these guys both bad mother effers to begin with? Absolutely. This was deserving.
Wait, why won't you say it? Are you a role model?
No, I don't know. I don't know. It's just bad fuckers. I have no
There he is, everybody.
All right. These guys are as bad as it gets, right? This fight was the one I was most excited about. And let's take away the ending. If it didn't have that insane ending, everyone still should be kind of bowing down to Max Holloway. And it was a great reminder for me because I was not wrong, dead wrong about this fight. I thought Gaethje had this one in the bag. And certainly it's not a great way to start a fight by getting your nose broken at the end of round one. Now, that's never a good thing. Badly. However, this was a masterful performance from Max Holloway. And similar to Aljo, which we will get to, I think this weight class allows him to utilize the tools that he is so good at. He has the energy, he has the strength at 155 pounds to execute it when he needed to. Now, it was a decimation. He picked Gaethje apart, aside from maybe round 4, which he probably lost. Holloway was on fire. He was utilizing all the right tools. The only knock maybe on this one was he probably took too many leg kicks. All right. Okay, whatever. Going against Gaethje. But as far as what he was doing with his hands, with his movement, defensively, this was the best Max Holloway I'd ever seen. Now, he decided to throw that all away with 10 seconds. I wouldn't have done it, right? Maybe it's because I'm a wimp, or I just wanted to hold on and get that win in my pocket. Establish myself as that bad fucker. I beat that guy. Okay. Holloway goes, no, I'm beating him the whole time, and I'm willing to throw it away and just go, all right, now this is for the bad motherfucker belt. Right now, we're going to see, I established myself as the better fighter. Now, let's see who the baddest motherfucker is. And he decided to go there, throw the dice, and then knocked out Gaethje, a guy who was known for his knockout power in that range. He was better than him. I did not expect that. Now, there's some luck involved there. Could have gone the other way maybe, so there was risk involved. But for Max Holloway to be able to be willing to do that and knock Gaethje out face first into the canvas with 1 second left in round 5, you couldn't write a script better than that. You would watch a movie and go, no, that would never happen. Not like that.
Right.
No, it did.
Yeah. So Max Holloway, maybe the greatest volume boxer in UFC history. He's known for a lot of things, greatness, never knockout power per se. He had the recent knockout against Chan Sung Jung, the Korean zombie, and, say what you want about that, a tremendous highlight, but not this. And maybe at that point of the fight, Max Holloway doesn't think that Justin Gaethje is capable of finishing him. But no, right? Like, he's done this before. He pointed to the center of the octagon against Ricardo Lamas at UFC 199. This is just the cloth from which he is cut. And just couldn't happen to a better dude, man. I can't even believe it. I worried about being able to properly articulate myself on this show today. Not because we're live, but because I'm a fan of this sport. And it's just like, dude, like Dana says, we sell holy shit moments. And it's like, dude, I had to be sharp when this happened on Saturday night. Today, I don't have to be. Like, dude, holy shit. Like, are you serious? The BMF title fight's going to end with Justin Gaethje face first on the canvas with 1 second to go after an epic 24 minutes and 59 seconds. I mean, come on, man. It's like, how many people didn't watch mixed martial arts before UFC 300 and are forever hooked? Like, come to a live event. I dare you. It'll ruin your marriage.
That's why you give those bonuses out to guys like Max Holloway. Again, that's just what we know. But imagine what he made or what he's worth to be willing to do that stuff. This is from a business perspective, not from a strategical, tactical standpoint, but just from being an entertainer and going, I got a Max Holloway that fights for me, and I know if I put him out there when the lights are brightest, he will shine bright as well. And I think he may shine brightest at 155 pounds. Now, maybe that's the case, but I would say this. I saw an evolution in his game on a technical level. He just seemed sharper. He wasn't eating the same shots that sometimes he, when he goes out there and decides to trade in the pocket, sometimes you'll see Max Holloway eat a lot of shots, take a lot of damage. This was not the guy that fought Dustin Poirier. And say what you will, to me, yes, he was probably stronger and in better shape, all that stuff. But this is a different. The coaches over there with Max Holloway deserve so much credit because they're not the names that people are throwing around. Even me, I couldn't come up with their names right now as coaches, but whatever it is they deserve. It's Gracie Techniques, I think.
Michael Nakagawa. There's a lot of unheralded guys. Darren Yap on the strength and conditioning side. He's a loyalist too.
He looked different. And again, the class that he showed, the respect that he showed to Gaethje, and then obviously the ending of that fight, everything. It proved me wrong because I said, you know what? I don't know if he is I thought he was kind of losing a step. Now, is it because maybe he wasn't ready to make that evolution in his game? Or is it the weight class at 145 pounds that is preventing him to look as good as he hopes, right? Is he cutting too much weight? I don't know what the answer is. Maybe it's a little bit of both, of dialing in that weight cut, and now he's a different fighter technically and tactically. But this was the best Max Holloway I've seen in a very long time, and it was a great reminder to me, hey, man, give these guys a chance. Even as many fights as he's had, they still can evolve, and that's because Max Holloway is not only a fighter, but he's a martial artist as well.
There was a time, and not all fighters are both fighters and mixed martial artists. That's for damn sure. Right. There was a time, 2017, 2018, when we were still with Fox. Max Holloway did an interview with you, I believe, and Michael Bisping, and was having a real hard time, and the weight cut was part of it, and a lot of people were burying him at that point in time. So I certainly think he has now found his correct weight class. And when you hearken back to the wins over Jose Aldo in Brazil and all of the epic triumphs for Max Holloway prior, this is the biggest win of his career singularly. He beat a prime Justin Gaethje as well, who had just disposed of Rafael Fiziev and Dustin Poirier. Justin Gaethje, if he had broken his foot during this training camp, it stands to reason his next fight would have been against Islam Makhachev for the undisputed UFC lightweight championship. Justin Gaethje deserves boatloads of credit, not just for his role in this ultimate highlight at the end of the fight, but for accepting this fight, for defending a belt that had never been defended before. Yeah, you can say he cleared $5 million probably net on the night or something like that, right? As a pay-per-view point earning defending champion, right? But Justin Gaethje deserves a lot of credit, and Max Holloway beat, I think, as close to the best version of him. You're right, the nose break factor prominently in all of this, but just a huge stock raising win for Max Holloway. And yet in one part, I sort of wonder aloud why he needed a win like this. Certainly not the highlight, right, with the 1 second, but why did, for me, he need this win to be in that conversation as the greatest, of all time, one of the greatest fighters of all time, Kenny?
And he set himself up now to be a contender or title challenger in 2 weight classes. With one fight, with one performance. And again, it's another reminder. You can change the trajectory of your career with one strike, with one performance. Let's go back to Masvidal, who was fighting for years. He does a flying knee over Askren, and now he's the biggest thing in mixed martial arts, right? So again, it's so interesting how you can change a narrative very, very quickly. And Max Holloway has always been that dude, but questions start to arise. Can he still do that? He's been fighting a long time. He's had a lot of wars. Max Holloway is still at the top of his game, man. That was just unbelievable.
I also think at this point, even though I do think he is his best version at 55, I think he's got a great chance to beat Ilia Topuria at 45, and I think that's going to be the next fight for Max Holloway for the undisputed UFC featherweight championship. Ideally, title defense number 1 for Topuria in Spain, potentially. I don't know. Maybe it would be Noche UFC. Who knows exactly when and where that fight will be. But Kenny, this obviously positions Max Holloway for 3 belts. He could defend his BMF belt. Chael Sonnen wants to see him do that. I don't think that's the next move at all. But he could also be a number 1 contender for 2 titles. I think he's going to fight Ilia Topuria. You do have a little bit of a different situation at lightweight. You already have a title defense announced for Islam Makhachev against Dustin Poirier, UFC 302 on June 1st. And then you also have Arman Tsarukyan lurking, who presumably is going to wait now and idle and maybe be next for the winner of that fight. But if Poirier beats Makhachev, then that throws a wrench into a lot of different plans. Talk to me about what is next for Max bless Holloway, whose world it is right now.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of thinking on this, I guess, on the same level of Chael in some ways, in that you have this BMF belt now, right? And there's some questions as to what weight class he should be at. He wants to fight against Topuria. Well, again, I know we talked about, title winners defending their belt first before moving on to anything else. Would a happy medium be the BMF belt against Topuria at 150 pounds? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe they fight in the middle. And then if he was to win that fight, Topuria still retains his featherweight belt, and then he goes and does it at 145 pounds. I don't know. It's something that he's going to have to have a conversation about, because you could also argue, hey, man, he can go in there and challenge for the belt against Islam Makhachev at some point. There's a lot of options for him, and this is all because of Max. But if I'm being honest, the fight against Topuria, whether it's some kind of catch weight, which I'm sure the UFC won't be crazy about, but there is this BMF belt that he has now, so you could justify it that way. But I think the fight against Topuria at 145 pounds, we need someone who can challenge Topuria, and Holloway for me is the guy that stands out. And for Volk, he needs to take time away anyway, in my opinion. So we'll see what happens.
Right. Well, full stop for me with respect on Topuria right now fighting for the BMF belt. And not to say that Ilia Topuria is Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, like a guy who could never fight for that BMF belt, right? And I say that with all due respect, right? You can't be like Mr. Congeniality, some super nice guy, right? Alex Morono's not going to fight for the BMF belt, He's just too nice, right? But I just don't know. Like Ilia Topuria, I just don't think he's deep enough into his career, right? For a BMF type of showcase, right? I think you could go Conor McGregor, Max Holloway for a BMF belt. And I think Max Holloway can make 45. I'm not going to say with relative ease, Kenny, at this point in time, but he's looked progressively better, remarkably, making that weight as he has gotten older. The last few times he really has looked good. He's won 2 straight fights at featherweight. So I think you got to go undisputed featherweight championship, Max Holloway versus Ilia Topuria. And if Max wins that fight, depending on how the calendar works and health is wealth, I'd like to see Max Holloway at some point position himself for a shot at the lightweight championship, because he just beat the guy and the version of the guy in Justin Gaethje who had laid out the resume to fight Islam.
And I think Topuria's face kind of said it all as well. At the end of that, he was like, he was as surprised as everybody else. His jaw dropped, and he may have sold it without even meaning to. So again, anytime you have more than 1 or 2 options, that's a good thing. And that's all because of Mr. Max Holloway.
You are an interesting case when it comes to somebody who could fight for the BMF belt, because as we've documented on this Anik and Florian podcast, Kenny's a martial artist and a much better human being than me, heaven and hell. He's definitely got the clearer path to heaven than me. But, he's not like Khalil Roundtree Jr. when it comes to octagon restraint either. This is a guy in Kenny Florian who gave Joe Lozon a couple of extra shots. And, so I kind of lost my train of thought. But like for you, no, it's baddest motherfucker, right? For you on this podcast, you're like the nicer guy, right? Like evil twin me, whatever. Like, but stylistically, I think you're a BMF type of guy. But I think maybe you even were too nice outside the octagon to have fought for that BMF belt. What do you think?
Yeah, maybe. I think so. Well, also, I didn't have kind of that style of just fighting anyone, anywhere, at any time, just like I
Right.
did fight in different weight classes, but I
Yeah.
was definitely more calculated with when I
Yeah.
took the fights. I never
Yeah.
said no to a fight, but I just needed the right amount of time. Like
Right.
so I don't know if I would qualify
All
for
right.
that
All right.
yet.
So real quickly, in about 60 seconds, how would you handicap a fight between Max Holloway and Ilia Topuria at 145 pounds?
Okay. I'm still not sure Max is going to be the same guy at 145 pounds. So I would have Topuria as a favorite, probably maybe in the minus 150 range, and maybe Holloway in the plus 125 range. So close-ish, especially after that last performance. But I would think Topuria would still be the slight favorite heading into that one.
In terms of the leg kicks that Max Holloway absorbed in this fight against Justin Gaethje, a lot of fighters say this is a toughness equation. Now, we all have different pain thresholds or whatever, right? But like when Cody Garbrandt fought Dominic Cruz, it was this virtuoso performance. Cody could barely walk. As
Yeah.
Dana White acknowledged at the press conference, Max Holloway is wearing super tight jeans, and I see him at the post show, and he's not even limping, right? So, what a tough customer.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely. And
do
again,
you
hitting him in
believe?
the right spot.
Well, like Bilal Muhammad repeatedly says, it's a toughness equation, right? But like Conor McGregor, when he absorbed those leg kicks against Dustin Poirier, like, dude, like physiological, like look, the visual. I mean, I don't know that any human being would have been able to walk on that type of injury. So I wouldn't sit here and suggest that. Like, I think Conor's tough enough to take leg kicks, but he was in a wheelchair, So like, do you think it's a toughness quotient type thing or what?
I think it's a toughness quotient, definitely in that realm as far as having that toughness, but also having the ability to keep your composure so you're not losing any added energy to the equation, right? So I think when you grow up in Hawaii and you grow up in the way that Max Holloway did, he's dealt with a ton of adversity, man. And he's had a lot of street fights along the way. That's just kind of the nature of,
Yeah.
living there. And I think nothing kind of phases him at this stage. He's seen the worst of it. And this was no different. And he had a ton of time in that octagon where, I don't know, he just brought that composure, that calmness, and of course that toughness. The dude's something special, man.
Yeah. Congratulations to Max Blessed Holloway on a life-changing night and performance. And anyone who watches this show regularly knows that his performance against Calvin Kattar from January of 2021 on Fight Island on ABC is immortalized behind me. That is the singular greatest performance that I have seen with my own eyes. But that was against Calvin Kattar. That was not against a prime Justin Gaethje with championship stakes. And obviously it wasn't punctuated with a highlight like this with 1 second to go. So I said to Max Holloway after this fight, I can't believe you topped the Calvin Kattar performance, because when I hearken back to the best offensive performances I've seen, Kenny Colby Covington against Robbie Lawler, all the records are Holloway versus Kattar, and yet somehow he topped it. So congrats to Max Holloway. We'll get Ray Longo's thoughts on that, but what an absolute warrior. And Hawaii couldn't have a better guy to root for and get behind. And the same can be said for Danbury, Connecticut's own Alex Pineda, Ken Flo. Sao Paulo, Brazil as well.